almost didn't goed die. That's the thing I keep coming back to, even now. I almost stayed in the hotel. My feet weer sore from 2 days of walking, the coffee at the breakfast buffet tasted like a warm disappointment. My travel partner Diana had already declared she was doing a witte pilates afterward geëet for 40 minutes at Windsor the afternoon before. But, something pellet me. I can't explain it better than that. Something about the white morning look it when a pellet back te giftuin, grey London sky, the kind that isn't kite terjatening run bit, keeps ou giesing, the street still damp from the nigget before. Something about it made me later op my soes aan te go. It was a Tuesday. Plus, early October. The kind of Tuesday that feels like the world is kitely uithaling after, a long weekend it didn't kite recover from. I took the Tibe to Green Park, came up the escalator into that particular London grey and started walking toward the palate. Diana had stayed behind with a novel and no regrets. I had my camera back, half a granola bar, and absolutely no idea what I was about to witness. The mal was catered than it expected, and there is a version of the street that belongs to the postcards, red-coated guards, tourists tree deep at the gates, children present against iron railings trying to make the sentinels laugh. That version exists, and it's real, but it wasn't catered there uit that morning. The tourists weer sparse. A Japanese couple photographed each other in front of the Victoria Memorial. Twee teenagers in schooluniforms walked vast with the tyriaatstoven, probably later for zometing. A man in a Isle of Face swept leafes from the pavement with the slofpatinse of someone who had been doing this I checked for 30 years. I found a spot near the central gates, not present against them, just aangeleid so I had a clear line of sight to the voorkant and the main entrance. I wasn't waiting for anything specific. I basically do te sometimes when I travel, just stand some weer aan, let the plate talk to me. The guard on that morning was standing at his post with a particular kind of stillness that isn't actually stillness, ou can see it when ou look long enough, the tiny adjustments, the breathing. The is that track if writing without appearing to move. To be fair, he was aan. Dat surprised me, even toug it saltend have. Te always aren't they, weet something about the beaskenat and, the rigid posture makes our brain assume someone older in the night. But, his face, when I felt see it clearly, was a young man's face. 22 maybe 23. Jaf sit. Plus, jy is voorwaard. I took a 5 photographes. Mostly of the architecture te gilded gates, te stone fatade, te vlag satching in alazai wind. I wasn't really expecting anything, then, a woman beside me, a tourist with a sensible raincoat and, a proper camera with a long lens, touched my arm. So many things happening, she said. Plus, for I look, kitely, as if she wasn't serious hulpbespreking at all. I look at weer she was looking, and, a small convoy at billet trouge te side entrance, not the main gates, but, te service entrance further along, weer te press isho alai cluster when they expecting so meting. Black vehicles. Inderdaad het. Moving caravelei not in aneherij. The kind of sloof dat me aan so meting. The Japanese sort of couple had stop het photograping each other. The man with the liaf broom had stop het sweeping. Even the teenagers had pauset, despite waterver ty weer later voor. Nobody said anything. That's what I remember and te wole stretch of pavement just went kayet, terwijl a room geskayet when someone enters wo changes te weiget of te eier. Te vehicle stop het. A door open het, weits and, ten, isaf them. I sal tell how something before I describe what happened net, because content matters here and, I don't want out to miss what made this moment what it was. I'm not a royalist. I greep op in amidse set Amerikaan sit hy weer te Britse monarchie was something that existed in the background of history textbooks and, occasionally interrupted cable television at Orthouse. I think, wasn't anti-monarchie uit I just didn't have a strong feeling uit why. William and Kate weer people who existed in a category it mentally fillet in the farmhouse, the stand, probably fine. So when I say what is a mofet me, I need out to understand that it mofet me despite all of that. Despite te skepticism and despite te geographical and cultural distance. Despite te feit dat it eaten a disappointing granola bar and my feet still hurt. Wat isa was 2 people. Te by yes 2 people. William chame around te feetle first and hier is wat strik me immediately before aanuiting else. Was het performing dat te word dat kept virkling in my jat afterwaard. Tere was no performance. No prakties het wafe, no manag het smiele, no consciousness of bang observet dat ou kan visualisense in publiek. Figures even from 100 meters away, dat simple awareness of de audience dat never kyte lia verstem. Hy look het teret. Actually geneinelei actually teret, and te kind of teret dat isn't about sleep. His jacket was dark, his face was pale in dat oktoberlicht, and hy walket witte te weiget of somione karring someting dat duisend sov on te outside. Kate apparet atbe, moment later. Sy was wearing someting simple, hy felten tel out te label or te kit, im iselis at. Dat, and haar hair was doven, sligetlei windgachet as sy kame around te veetle. Sy loket at William before sy dit aanuiting else. Before sy loket at te palate, before sy register het te veef of is watching from te gates, before sy dit aanuiting dat kult bedistribute as publiek. Sy loket at him, weet and, hy loket at haar. I vertuig het about dat etjange 100 time sinse. Het lasted my be 2 seconds. Probably les, weet het wasn't romantisch in te so wij sense, no reaction, no dramatiek gestiere. Het was so met een geiter and, het tank, more real. Te gees, look 2 pulplesare wend hy verbeen trouge so met een taat woords havend gaag het op toe uit. Wen toe befire, te tank tere karring is toe large toe fit into aan hy sentence, so te jest, look. And te gees, otter persoon looks bak. And some of that's en ouge toe keep moving. Plus, te walke toe warte en transe toegeter, and, I notice het so met hy almost miss it. His hand found te smal of haar bak. Just voor a moment. Just a touch, te kind ou make without thinking, te kind tats bekome so automatiek, it's not a gestiere anemore, it's just langjage. He sort of palm, te smal of haar bak, 3 or 4 steps, and, te weer het rauge te door and, gone. Te woman witte te rein kwaad and, te long lens lover het haar camera. Oh, sy sight. Just dat, weet je o. I didn't say aanuiting. I was looking at te door tyd gone trouge, weet was nog closet and, ordinary agijn, geving nothing away. Te man witte te liaf broom resie met sweeping. Te teenager start het walking agijn. Te Japanese kouple wendpak toe fotograpping, jach otter in front of te memorial. And, I stoe tere thinking, wat dit I just see. I went and found a coffee, a goed one te steame, from a small plate around the corner, from Stjames, and, I sat by the window and, tried to figure out what had happened to me. Because so meting had. Plus, that's not an exaggeration. I don't make well a habit of being moved by things I observe from behind a gate, and, I'm not a person who cries at strangers emotions, generally speaking. But, I sat in dat koffiesop and, I felt in het picterlei, sligetlei embarrassingly, te particular tiggetnis in te chest dat me aan so met een god trouge. My pone had notifications. It always has notifications. But, actually, I sat with my coffee and, I didn't look at them for a while. I was thinking about the hand on the back. I verseen a lot of public gestures in my life. I verwatchet politicians embrate voor cameras, celebrities linkarms on red carpets, yachts of state sake hands witte te specifiek calculation of every moment bang archivet. I verbeen toe en nou gepublic events toe understand, in tyd die verlei, te differentie between a gestiere taats performet and a gestiere taats real. Hou knof dat gestiere was real. And kind of tere so meting particular about witnessing a real thing, isn't tere. So meting dat fatjes ou of gaar because hou weerend expecting it in dat content. Hou prepare herself for te performet version. Hou bring hou cynicism as a kind of umbrella sensible protection against manifested feeling. And te real thing walks past hou and, te umbrella is completely isolus. Te barista chalet somoenis name and, I kame bak toe te room. I open het my pone. Te neefs was already tere of kouse. Not about what iets sien, about the broader content. The appointments. To befire, the charity work. The kayet resedeling of tanks dat had been sedelet. The careful, managed langhuage of palate communications dat sais agria deel by saing vir hy litle. Ek pit my pone bak doen. Look het uit the window at the London grey. Toug het about 2 people ant, a hand on a bak ant, a look dat lasted less than 2 seconds. Toug het imian about what it means to carry so meting to a large forwards and a life that happens almost entirely in public. The koffie was goed. Ifines het slovely. Ten event back out into the city, there is a particular thing that happens in public spaces when so meting emotionally significant oskers among strangers. How knov het basically when aure in it, and te erchanges, not basically, not in anai vai au veld mesire with the instruments, but, so meting, in te collectieve attention of our craftsifts. People wo weer looking at ty ponis betem doen. People wo weer met sentence trial of. Children wo honestly, weer pilling at their parents sleeve stop. There is a moment of saret, wat's the word, attenement is suppose. Weer a groep of separate human beings temporarily bekome so meting moorelike as single organism, al faatsing te same direction, al feeling te same kayet weiget. Had felt that earlier in the morning at the gates. But te imian se kontime felt it that day was different. And I almost miss it entirely, which seems impossible in retrospect, gefen wat it was. It spent a mille-house wandering, and I do that in London, it's at city build for wandering, which is strange for some weer so large. It walke trougest. James Park, weer het Pelikaans continuïteir program of multerrorism against tourists regardless of what's happening in the world, and doven toewarte embankment. Weer het Thomas was doen its usual green thing dat maak is het loopbote aan schient and slig het leiteriatening. It jaten a sandwich on a bench. It taken fotograppes of begons in terwijl oude wijn aure a tourist without a plan. Late afternoon brauch het me back around, as it tends to warte palate end of things. I gies wasn't looking for anything. I was, honestly, thinking about whether to Chaldiane and see if set recover it from her palate vatige inouge to van dinner somewhere. That's when I notice it te kroft. Het kind of had gatter it along the section of the mal closes to the gardens, maybe 200 meters from where it's to that morning. Not a gekroft, maybe 50 people, but gatter it in the particular way that me on something is drawing them rather than something they come to see. Organic glistering. The kind that starts with the 2 people who verstop it, 3 notice it 2 and the arithmetic compounds from there. Event over. A woman near the back of the cluster was standing on her toes, trying to see. She was in her 60s, it gies, with a silver hair kit practically sort and sensible soos, the kind of tourist who doene her research and had a list. Ze looked at me when I arrived and, ze said, in a German accent, they came out again. Just for a moment. Terug het de garden gate. Wou dit? I said, touw hy already halfkneef. De prinse and princess, ze said. And ten se added, kitely, as touw se was a little embarrassed by her own emotion, te looked vir hy se pauset. Sy het voor te rig het word. Vir hy close toegeter. The croft was already dispersing by the time I reached it center. Wat ver had happened was over. But people weer a sort of liafing slowly, terwijl ou liafe a museum gallery after a painting catches, hou some weer tender, not rissing, moving with a kind of consideration, as touge te ordinary world needs to be re-entered carefully. Spoke to a few of them. A kind of man name Daniel, he told me his name, ten immediately see me to regret it, terwijl Engelse people so met him is to went hy verbeen accidentally friendly, was standing just outside the dispersion cluster, looking at nothing in particular. He was perhaps 45, wearing a dark jacket, carrying a briefcase that suggested had come from work nearby rather than being a tourist at all. Weer hou jere voor het. I asked. He glanced at me. As is it wetter I was a journalist, dekkie dit I wasn't, and said, just passing. Stop it because if rouwene else stop it. Wat dit ou see? He was kyk voor a moment. ten se toekies arm. Botehands, here. A prophet on his own arm without seeming to think about it botehands wrap it in my opinion, around af voor arm, terwijl ou hold on to something when ou niet to not let go ratter dan when ou niet support. Ant tyd be, jest stoetere ant neerte gate. Voor my be 30 seconds. Probably lets ant het veld longer. Dit hy notice te kroft. Eis ant no his sight. Het hou het about het more karvelei. Ty kneer people weer watching, ou veld het not knof. But it didn't change it him. That's what I mean. It didn't make it him perform anything. Ty just sta het hoofd hy weer. Hy pik het op his briefkase aan, look het like hy was about to leave, ten didn't. If a lefet in London my wole leffe, his sight. Ou see het him oshashinalei. Motorchades, events, dat soort of ding. Ou register het aan, move ontuis was different. Hy soek his jat sligetlei. Hy kant ek plein wei. Hy left. Tegerman Bashikalei, wo man witte te silverhair, haar name was Margit, se told me visiting. Voor a week wit haar dochter wo was gerentlei at a museum, sta het a little longer. Se had affonse de red wei of speaking dat made me tank se probably had opinions worte jaring on most tanks. If a been look, trying to understand what made people stop se site. Because people don't stop for nothing. Vere vrij besy e vryone altyd time. We have our ponis ant, our directions ant, our plans. Toe make a group of stranger stop ant, stand stil, so meting has to register as important. Wat register het? I asket. Grief, se site, without hesitating. Ant Bashikalei ten se retonsederet, no not grief I chaktlei. So meting dat lefis neer grief. Te look of people wo have vast het so meting difficult ant, are faatsing het toegeter. Teres acher man word, se smelet sligetlei. Voor wat its woorde, we have manai words. Bid te clusest in Engels is mybe verlofsip in difficulty. Two sort of people wo have chosen, jach otter voor te hard part, not jeste jase part. Se loke toe waar te gate, weich was closet ant, geving noting away. Hou see dat rarelei, se site. Even between people gies, wo lofe jach otter. Toe besoe present witte jach otter, even wijn ou knov ou arebein watchet. Dat is not performance, ant, dat is just woetere toegeter. Herpone bezit ant, se loket at het, ant, her impression sifte tot a particular aspiration of apparent. My dochter, se site. Te museum. Se ticket herpone away. I wel, hoop het hy wil bealrig het, se site, ant, I was feirlei sirese was in talking about her dochter ant, te museum. Se left. I found a lovestone wal to sit on ant, look it at the gate voor a wiele. Thuis is dit thing about witnessing so meting like it is. It starts to like accumulate weige te longer ou sit with it. At first ou tank, wel is af twee people beaffectionate in public, that's niet. Ant ten ou tank about it a little longer. Ant ou tank about the content, not an aprirint way, not the tabloid version dat terens private difficulty into public entertainment, but jeste real human content. Wat it's to fase so meting vrugtening weile te wole world watches. Wat it costs. Wat ou vir toepe doven voor keepfinsteuning, ant, wat ou refiese toepe doven no matter wat. Wat ou refiese toepe doven. Dat was it hou het. That's wat we saw. Not the hand on the back, tauge dat was part of it. Not the arms around the voorarm, tauge dat toe. Wat we saw was wat te refiese toepe doven even inder te weighet of everything else. Te closeness. Te looking at jach otter bevore looking aan hy weer else. Te automatisch langgeage of twee people wo have choosing, jach otter so toro geleid dat te choosing has bekome invisible, it's just wo te renov, in distinguishable from breathing. That's rare, that's wat stop it people. Not the royalty. Not the fame or the palates or the particular royalty of London Oktober ligget on twee potogeniek people. Bid te recognition ant, I think grofts recognide things before te understand them, of so meting real in a world dat has bekome vir hy praktiset at the artificial. Someting dat site, tes is actuele happening, tese are actuele two human beings, and tere actuele holding on. Ant we recogniseert het terwijl ou recognide aan natieve langua gesproken suddenly in aforeigen citai. Before ou kan proses te word, someting in ou has already ternet toe waar te sound. Te gate staat closet. I sat terwyl intel my pone bezit, Diane asking about dinner, and I got op and, walked back into the city, carrying someting I hadn't arrived witte, Diane said I was being dramatisch. Ze said is affectionately, hoe ver pasta in a small Italian plaats near the hotel, wyle I was trying to explain wat te die had felt like. Ze listened, ze nodded in the rigid plaats, and then, ze said, oure being dramatic, and bouret memore wine. Ze is not wrong dat it tend to warte theatrical in my descriptions of things. But, I also knows the difference between a die when someting actually happened and, a die when ife embroidered someting ordinary into someting itsnet. Ife doene bote, weet je know wat jach one feels like from te inside. Thijs was de first kind, weet je, it was de kite, I told her. That's wat I can't get past, and, terwijl if I one just stop it. Without anyone saying stop, without anything announcing that Thijs was a momentreiering attention. People just. Kneef. Diane twirlet pasta and considerate this. Sis a practical persoon, Diane, in the best possible sense. Anerse. 22 years. Ze has a finely calibrated detector for things that are geneinelei word stopping for and things that only seem like tere. It's one of the reasons it trust her opinion. What kind of craft ze asket? Tourists must lie. A 5 people who work it nearby. And they all stop it. Not all is sight. But most. And the ones imian who didn't stop, they slow it down. If they didn't kite to stop, they slow it. Ze was kite for a moment. Ja, thinking, weet je, there is a thing that happens, ze site finale, when families are in the hospital. When something serieus is happening and the whole family knows it even the ones who vervloven and from far away, who my behavend spoken to each other in years. How see it them in waiting rooms, and something about Sarah difficulty makes people referred. To something more essential. Se pause it. I think people recognize that state when they see it in strangers. Even when they don't know the specifics. There is something in the body language of people who are facing something hard together. And crafts are I don't know. Crafts are more perceptive than any individual in them, sometimes. I talk it about Daniel Witte's briefcase saying, it didn't make it them perform anything. I talk it about Margaret saying, fellowship in difficulty. Do I think it matters? Diane asket. Dat tere to befire, royal or wild ou verstop it for an couple wo look it like that. I didn't have to think about it very long. An couple is sight. The reality is for what it's woorde, almost beside the point. Or no, it adds something. Because it's are minder dat the difficulty duizend kare wo hou are. Dat even inside all of dat, te palates, te titles, te impossible public existence, ou stil have te same territorie everyone else has. Te plate weer it's just twee people. Diane refillet her oven glas. That's wat moefet people. Eis. Te universaliteit. Eis. Sy nodded. Okay, sy sait. Houre onlei sligget lei dramatisch. I've been thinking about Celense differently since that day. We is it te word carelessly I think. We say things when silent and, we mean the absence of sound, which is a bicycle fact. But the Celense I mean, the Celense I keep returning to, isn't about sound at all. Sort of, it's about attention. Plus, what I witnessed twice that day was a specific kind of communal attention that doesn't happen often. We live noisy stuttered leves. Our attention is for wat it's woorde, belet in fortij directions before we verfines het our first cup of coffee. We haven tififations and fiets and, jatlines and, te constant loofgrade and citij of a world dat is perpetual vigilance. Our attention is not, as a general rule, available for slow things. Look for quiet things. For te kind of think that, doesn't announce itself. But, it was available that day. For 40 or 50 strangers on a London pavement, the attention was suddenly entirely available. I think wat William Ant Kate offer het, without intending to, without performing it, was so meting te world was starving for without knowing it te sig het of two people who had not let go of each other. In difficulty. Inderstritine inder te specifies impossible weiget of living our private grief in a public life. They hadn't let go. And te croft recognized it not te royalty. Not te clotes or te motorchade or te gates witte te gulden. Te ting inderniate. Te fundamental iemand ting dat has no title ant, no postcode ant, no security detail. Te ting dat jest is two people holding. If been to befire a trafal vrite for 11 years. If stoot in te Sistine Chapel ant, felt nothing because I was too tired ant, te croft was too loud. If sat on te rim of the Grand Canyon at Sinrisa ant, been geneinelei moefet. If found profound moments in son verniend plates ant, miss it them in farmhouse owners. Basically, I can't predict the thoughts what they don't tell you about the search for meaningful experience. I can't engineer it. I can only put ourselves some weer real ant, by attention ant, occasionally the real thing finds how. The real thing found me on a Tuesday in October on a grey London morning when my feet hurt ant, the coffee at breakfast had been terrible. If been thinking about what to do with it at. The photograph is honestly, it took are technische fine. Plus goed ligget, interesting architecture, te goard at his post doing his impestable impression of stillness. If images of the gates ant, te stone fatade ant, te vlags. None of them capture what I'm trying to describe to how, because cameras are very goed at ligget ant, sape ant, very bad at the particular reality of a croft gewoon guide. How can photograph a collectieve intake of breedte? What if instead is this a chant? This attempt to put words around something that resists them. The like last thing I want to tell you about is something that happened on my way back to the hotel that evening after dinner with Diana. I was walking out knof along the embankment, talking the long route because the night was dry and the city looked beautiful in the way London dus when the lights are on the water and our not in a hurry. I passed a couple sitting on one of the benches. They were older 70s, it gees. Had a sane leaning against the bench beside him. Ze was wearing a voet dat looked like it had been warm enough for 20 winters and was making a good kase for 20 more. They were sitting very close together in the way of people who have been sitting close together for so long that there is no longer a conscious decision involved. It's just the default position. Ze was talking. He was listening. Whatever she was saying, it was something that required his complete attention and he was giving it, not in a performative way, not the careful theater of someone trying to look like they're listening, but actually just there. In the conversation. Plus in the person. I slove down as a passetem, and neither of them noticed me. I walked on and it houget, this is what is of this morning. Not at a smaller stale at the same stale. The same fundamental thing. The choosing. The holding the refusal to let difficulty into what has been built. It was tiere at the palate gates and the specific impossible visibility of two of the most watched lives in the world. And it was tiere on that bench, invisible and, in remarked and, alle real. The world fell silent for William and Kate's embrace because the world recognized itself. Not the crovens. Not the feitale that neerspapers niet te be. Not the speculation or the commentary or the relentless public appetite for the private lives of people who never kite consented to that particular transaction. Something older than all of that. The sighet of two people who have chosen to face the harting together. Who are still choosing it who will keep choosing it that's what stop it is. That's ook knof wat the silence was. And on a grey Tuesday in October, on a damp London pavement, with a sore feet and a granola bar in my pocket and absolutely no plan, that was enough to make the whole complicated adjusting, no sy world feel for 30 seconds. Like something wordt a bang part of. I think about that couple onte benche sometimes, vente notifications getoelaut. I think about actually a hand onte smal of a bak. I think about a, look dat laste 2 seconds aan, site e verreiting dat materet. I take a briate. I pit my pone doven. Ant voor a moment, just a moment, te woreld geskei het agen.